number 3. So this is section B. So the essay was UK inflation up following rising real wages, and part A, explain using diagrams the difference between demand pull and cost push inflation. And this should have been a complete giveaway, to be completely frank. Yeah, but some people for some reason decided to answer it using micro diagrams, and they drew supply and demand. They showed ordinary demand shifting to the right and ordinary supply shifting to the left. Yeah, and that's just death. Yeah, I mean, inflation obviously is prices rising across the entire economy, not in a single market. And if you drew supply and demand, then you're toast. Yeah, don't do it. Don't do that. Yeah, in macro essays, don't use supply and demand diagrams unless you're talking about a specific part of of the economy. Labour markets in general, fine, but when you talk about inflation, that's prices rising across the economy as a whole. Yeah, and doing it with micro diagrams is just terminal. Beyond that, it's really very straightforward. I mean, essentially, all you've been asked for, is can you draw a couple of straightforward ADAS diagrams, label them, and refer to them. Yeah, so I mean, it depends on whether you want Keynesian or neoclassical. If we take Keynesian, some sort of Keynesian long aggregate supply, AD1, Y1, AD2, aggregate demand shifts to the right. That creates positive growth and puts upward pressure on prices. And what's being looked for is why are prices actually being pushed up? So as aggregate demand rises, firstly in product markets, because firms have more customers, there's now effectively less competition. There's more customers to go around, therefore it's easier to put up prices. At the same time, we're going to start running short of key factors of production like workers, who are going to be pushing for higher wages. So as a result of which, prices are going to be pushed up. Cost push. And some suggestions as to why aggregate demand might be rising, some sort of consumer boom, bubble in the housing market, cuts in interest rates, something like that, just to set the scene. With cost push, similarly, cost push. On the cost push side, then we end up with something like this. It doesn't really matter whether you use the short run AS or some sort of hybrid. Either is okay. What you're looking to do is say there's some sort of cost shock. It could be a drop in the exchange rate. It could be some sort of it could be a commodity price increase. It could be the wage increase that was mentioned in the title of the essay, although that can cause demand pull as well. And all you're trying to say is that your short run aggregate supply function shifts vertically. So what that means is that firms' costs have been increased to protect their profit margins. They're going to need to do something. And most likely they're going to have to increase their prices. And if the shock is large enough, in other words, it's happening across the economy as a whole, then that's then going to cause cost push inflation. So really, that essay should have been pretty straightforward. Because as long as you're using macro diagrams, as long as you're relating to the real world, there's really nothing very much to say. In a minute, I'll do part B. Be mucking around with kind of frames and moving around the house, but that'll come up in a minute. Okay, let's see whether it likes this better. Part B then is discuss the view that policies to reduce inflation will always lead to increasing levels of unemployment. I think that, again, the answers to this were slightly strange in the sense that people tended to focus on either the supply side or the demand side. So a very standard answer would be, well, the way in which we reduce inflation is we reduce aggregate demand. So therefore the Bank of England will put up interest rates, or the government could increase taxes or cut government spending. These will reduce aggregate demand. A reduction in aggregate demand will reduce inflation. However, reducing aggregate demand will also create unemployment. Some people did it using ADAS diagrams. Some people did it using short-run Phillips curve. Something along those lines. They then went on to evaluate the extent to which, is it always the case? Is it necessarily the case that an increase in interest rates will reduce inflation, or will it be the case? Will it be that an increase in interest rates will necessarily increase unemployment? It depends on the state of the economy and so on. And people came up with some sensible evaluation. Or will an increase in taxes necessarily increase unemployment and so on? And that was all fine. Incidentally, increasing VAT, however, isn't a very sensible way of trying to reduce inflation. Because obviously that will directly lead to an increase in the price level. Other people talked about the supply side. They said, one way of reducing inflation is that we can engage in labour and product market reforms. And so we can smash up trades unions, we can improve education and training, we can abolish the minimum wage, and so on and so forth. And they went on to evaluate the extent to which those would or wouldn't cause unemployment. Yeah, so so putting people onto 0 hours contracts in principle, it might make it easier to hire and fire, so that could actually increase unemployment. Although in principle, supply side policy is designed to to create to create growth in the long term, so therefore creating jobs. But what very few people did is to take the two together. Yeah. So what I'd be looking for is, I mean, when we did it in your notes, we said there are four main solutions to dealing with inflation. Yeah, we talked about demand side solutions, supply side solutions, direct controls such as price and incomes policies, and maybe working on inflationary expectations. Yeah. I think what I'd be expecting for this essay is for somebody to firstly say, well, conventionally the Bank of England will control interest rates, and that might or might not. They'll put interest rates up to bring inflation down. And that might or might not cause unemployment, so evaluate that. Then look at the supply side and say, in the longer term, however, we can bring inflation under control by improving the supply side. This might or might not cause unemployment, again, depending, so you're evaluating that, overall, to what extent does it. Then, if you've done that fully, you probably run out of time at that stage, and then just come to a conclusion, saying, well, look, it depends on how you do it, it depends on the situation. So, if you've got any time, then you could look at something like controlling inflation expectations. Somebody did a good job of arguing that the impact of reducing inflation expectations is to shift the short-run Phillips curve down vertically, so you can reduce inflation without any increase in unemployment at all. So again, the key there is look at both the supply side and the demand side and evaluate each as you're going through it. Okay.